In today's video, I am going to be comparing Cherry Punk with the newest Cherry Punk Extrait. So if you want to hear my thoughts, then please keep on watching. Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if it's the first time you are visiting. Thank you so much for joining me today. My name's Hayley and I review fragrances. And in today's video, I am going to be discussing Cherry Punk and the newest release, which is Cherry Punk Extrait by Room 1015. So if you want to find out the differences between these two fragrances, then let's jump straight into it. So I have been loving and reviewing Cherry Punk for quite some time on my channel. It's definitely my most worn cherry fragrance within my collection. I just love how it's been done. It's not a basic cherry. It has some unique nuances to it, in my opinion anyway, and I've definitely been wearing and loving this fragrance. So I was really excited to learn that they were bringing out an Extrait version. And I learned this news back in March when I was at the fragrance exhibition Essence. And I was waiting patiently for it to happen because of course I love Cherry Punk, so I was intrigued to see what they were going to do with the Extrait version. Now, I've always described Cherry Punk to be quite a sexy, rebellious cherry fragrance. It of course has a sour cherry note in here, and I find it to be more of a dark morello cherry. But it has a dose of leather in here, which makes this extremely sexy in my opinion. To set the scene a little bit, it always reminds me of a girl wearing a black slip dress with a distressed leather jacket. She has some red lipstick on and she hasn't had enough sleep from partying the night before. That is just the visual that I get when I think about Cherry Punk. Now, this is definitely a unisex fragrance, but that is the visual that comes to mind. It's a very rebellious cherry fragrance. It opens with that dark and beautiful cherry note, which is a little bit sour to me. You've also got some pepper in the opening and some sexy saffron. I get a little bit of sweetness in the base, and I also get a very, very smooth leather. The two most prominent notes to me are definitely the cherry and the leather, and then I do pick up on the saffron too, which is what I feel makes this fragrance very sexy and very wearable too. So how does the Extrait compare? Have they changed the notes? Is this one stronger? Does it wear better? I am going to give you my thoughts on this. Now, I personally find that Cherry Punk wears beautifully on me. It also has a really good projection. I get about 6 to 7 hours of wear with the original Cherry Punk, and it does leave a great scent trail. So when I found out that they were bringing out an Extrait, I was super curious to see what the take on it would be, because I didn't ever struggle with the longevity of the original Cherry Punk. And just to set the scene, I am not an oversprayer. I'm sure if I oversprayed my fragrance, it would last longer than that. So I was thinking this might be a more sticky, sweet and dense version. And maybe they would amp up some of the base notes like the leather, or maybe they would also amp up the saffron. Fast forward, I can give you my thoughts on this. So I think before I get into it, I'm just going to spray both of these fragrances on a test strip so I can compare them side by side. Now, I have been testing both of these before this video, and I have been wearing the Cherry Punk Extrait too, but I just want to spray them quickly so I can give you an on-camera reaction to both of them. Okay, so I have the original Cherry Punk here, and I have Cherry Punk Extrait in this hand. So initial impressions, and bear in mind this is the opening. Sour cherry. I'm getting the tonka bean actually straight away. I'm definitely getting the saffron, and I'm getting that smooth leather. Exactly how I'm used to perceiving this fragrance. It's very sweet, it's very juicy, but it's also a little bit sour. The cherry is almost syrupy. So this is the Extrait. So initially, the cherry isn't as prominent. Yeah, the cherry isn't as prominent in the Extrait for me in the opening, but I am getting a lot more of that pepper and that saffron, and then I'm getting a bigger dose of the leather. So to me, the original almost is sweeter in the opening, and the Extrait almost goes straight into the base of the original, if that makes any sense. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm getting. Now, from my wear tests of the two of them, I have a very similar experience to how it opens actually. So on my skin, the original definitely is a little bit sweeter overall in the composition. I'm getting a lot more of that sweetened sour cherry, whereas with the Extrait on my skin, it's a little bit more deep, dark, and sensual. You are going to get a lot more of that leather, and I'm actually starting to get a little bit more of the patchouli in the Extrait. So it's just a little bit deeper and darker, in my opinion. That is how I initially perceive it. I would say that the original almost projects a little bit more for me because it's lighter, whereas the Extrait definitely lasts longer on the skin. It sticks to my skin like glue, and it almost remains quite linear in terms of the scent profile. It doesn't change too much throughout the wear. Whereas with the original, I find that it changes quite drastically throughout the wear. That sour cherry note in the opening of the original starts to dissipate a little bit, and you're left with more of that saffron and the leather with a little bit of cherry in the dry down. Whereas in the Extrait, the cherry does remain right through to the dry down. Although it's not as sweet as the original, you're definitely getting more of a sexy and sensual cherry. The saffron is beautiful. It adds this almost earthy spiciness. And then I'm getting a very smooth leather. So all in all, I'm just going to smell them again. I think both are absolutely fantastic. For those of you that maybe found the original a little bit too sweet on the cherry and they wanted a little bit more depth, a little bit more darkness, I would say the Extrait is probably going to be for you. And also if you wanted better longevity, of course the Extrait is going to be for you. Whereas I find that the original almost has a bigger projection, which can sometimes be the case of an EDP versus an Extrait. So I feel like they are definitely different enough to warrant having both in your collection, but it depends what you're really looking for from your cherry-based fragrance. This is still definitely one of my favorite cherries on the market. As I've said, cherry normally isn't for me, but I just love how this one has been composed. Now, of course, I need more time with the Extrait, and we will see which one I start to reach for, but I think I am actually going to be reaching more for the Extrait because, as I have already mentioned, cherry isn't my favorite note, and I actually prefer how it's done in the Extrait. That kind of initial sweetness has been tapered down, and this is more of a realistic cherry note, whereas in the original, it is that kind of, I don't want to say synthetic cherry, but I do feel like with cherry notes, you're never going to get that true cherry smell. So I feel like the Extrait is maybe more sophisticated, it's a little bit more edgy, it's definitely sexier, and the Extrait leans a lot more unisex. So yeah, all in all, I feel like they are different enough. However, they will wear similar-ish. However, the Extrait has better longevity, it's a little bit darker, as I've already mentioned, and it's almost more dense in profile. Take down that cherry note a little bit, or the sweetness of the cherry, amp up the saffron, amp up the patchouli, the tonka bean, and also that leather note, and you're left with a very beautifully done Extrait. So I do hope this comparison was useful for you in some way. I could summarize the differences between these quite quickly, and I didn't want to keep repeating myself, but it will remain still one of my favorite cherry fragrances within my collection, and we will see if the Extrait overtakes it. I do feel like it will, just because of what I explained in the video, but we shall see. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please do let me know if you own Cherry Punk or if you've sampled Cherry Punk and what your thoughts are on this fragrance. But thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a pleasure as always. I hope to see you in a future video to come. Thank you so much and goodbye.